Information Center daily update at 10 o'clock every morning here in Windhoek. We are discussing today around the agricultural sector, considering that COVID-19 continues to impact the food supply in the country. To join me help discuss the impact of COVID-19 on the agricultural sector, I have Mr. Percy Misika, who is the Executive Director in the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform. Thank you very much, ED, for joining us.
Good morning.
Thank you. We're also joined by Ms. Beata Kulu, who is the Acting Executive Director for the Namibian National Farmers Union. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we're also joined by Mr. Rowley Venter, who is the Executive Manager for the Namibia Agricultural Union. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
And we are also joined by Mr. Ephraim Nekongo, who is a crop production farmer in the northern part of Namibia. Thank you very much, Mr. Nekongo, for joining us through Skype this morning. All right. Before, of course, as usual, we get into the discussion, I'd like to invite the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Health and Social Services, Dr. Mwinyangwe, to come give us a health update. Doctor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister. Good morning to everyone, and a warm good morning as well to our viewers and our Namibians out there. Okay, maybe before I come there, I don't know whether there was a question yesterday that was posed from someone in Maheke region, and the question was that a remark that he is observing that he's concerned a bit about public mobilization, especially in Maheke area, because he doesn't see that the community is really aware of the pandemic that we find ourselves in, because he's missing health workers, social workers on the ground. So yesterday we communicated to our colleagues and we got the answer that there is a team of stakeholders, including the Ministry of Health and Social Services, which is carrying out community awareness and education. They started in Hobabes using loudspeakers, and the radio as well. And then they also, from Hobabes, they went to the neighboring villages and farms in the constituencies where the community health workers are giving information on the COVID-19. So they are mobilizing the community, they are there. They also have now the Regional Disaster Risk Management Committee on board, and they will also help with awareness and be on the ground to try to respond to COVID-19. Now coming back to the update, the health update for this morning. As we all know, Namibia so far has recorded 16 COVID-19 cases, and for the past 2 weeks, we did not record any new cases. That, for us as a ministry, could be an indication that the lockdown is effective, or it's working. But of course, that does not mean that if we have not recorded cases for the past few weeks now, that does not necessarily mean that the transmission has stopped. Hence, the reason why the ministry has now started with rolling out the testing, because that will help the ministry to determine if there are missing transmissions or not. I want to add that 5 days before the lockdown, that was between the 12th and 16th of March, there were 49 cases that were tested, but 5 days after the lockdown, that is from the 17th up to the 21 April, we have now tested 153 cases. So that is an indication that now we are scaling up. Now, from the 16 cases that were confirmed, I'm happy to announce that one more patient has recovered. This patient has tested negative for COVID-19 twice. So they were done consecutively to test him or her, and then both tests came out negative. So that was done at an interval of 48 hours. So which means that, as I'm standing here now, we have the total of 7 recovered cases, and we have 9 that are still active. The 9 are in stable conditions, and our case management team is monitoring them on a daily basis. So the total tested that we have done so far is 590. Yesterday, 34 were tested. And pending results, we still have 14 that are pending. So that is as far as testing is concerned. And then, of course, with testing, we also do contact tracing. And we have, as I have mentioned yesterday, we have identified 118 contacts so far. And there are 8 out of the 118 that are active contacts that our team is also monitoring on a daily basis. So that is the health update for this morning. The good news, we have 1 recovery, so in total we have 7 and 9 that are still positive. I thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, DM, for that update. It seems we only get happy for that. Reported that the agricultural sector will be one of those affected because the number of people who will probably have acute hunger this year are likely to increase by over 100 million. So from a national perspective, how has the agricultural sector been impacted by COVID-19, whether it's from the farmer side or the crop production side, and how is that going to affect the situation in the country moving forward?
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. Maybe to answer that question, we need to put the sector in perspective. The agricultural sector is a value chain sector, which starts with production input supplies, and then production itself, to transportation, which entails logistics, and then processing, and then marketing, before we get the food to the consumers at the end of the value chain. So looking at that spectrum of the value chain, and considering the timing of the onset of COVID-19, which set in around December globally, and we had our first case here around March. One may recall that by that time, the cropping season was already halfway through. As such, most of the failures in agriculture production or in input supply may not necessarily be attributed to COVID-19. So all in all, one could say that the agricultural sector is still rearing from the 3-year consecutive droughts that have quite a major impact on the agricultural sector, much more than we can attribute to COVID-19 at the moment. Having said that, of course, you may recall that agriculture sector is divided into two. You have the livestock subsector, and you also have the crop subsector. And within the two subsectors, you also have your commercial subsector and your communal or subsistence subsector. And the impact of both drought and the impact of COVID are not necessarily the same on both of these sectors. To start with, for the communal sector, these are the most vulnerable candidates when you have any shock in the production system or in the value chain, either by a natural disaster or by a man-made disaster. In the sense that, first, they are starting from a base where they do not have the requisite resources in terms of equipment, in terms of production inputs, in terms of expertise, so that when you have a shock like COVID, that brings in limitations. It tends in one way or another to limit their capacity to produce more, which then goes on to affect household food security. We must also note that agriculture is mainly a labor-intensive sector. And when you have a shock of this nature, which limits the gathering of people at one point or another, be it on the farm for production, that's plowing, be it for weeding, be it for bed scaring in terms of mahango or pearl millet, when you have that, then definitely it tends to affect the level of production that one might have got. In the sense that the delays in reaching out to the rest of the farm, and we coupled with the lack of equipment, then delays the production process. So that, and when you combine that with a short and erratic rainfall pattern that we have, it means one may not be able to cover quite a lot of land to open up, plow, and weed in time for him or her to get a proper crop. That's number one. On the livestock sector, you do have also a situation where, for the commercial farmers, government, as you know, we had put in measures at the onset of the COVID-19, whereby we identified critical and essential services under Gazette number 7159 of 28 March 2020, and agriculture, the logistics related to that, the processing related to that, were all classified as essential services. So meaning these were allowed to continue. However, they had to follow the prescribed Ministry of Health and Social Services and WHO guidelines on how to go about their activities. Because of this, you would find that where you had auctions, where you could bring together 50, 100 farmers bring their livestock, you are no longer able to do so. Secondly, the buyers of livestock are also not free to travel and to come and congregate at the auction crawls. So at the end of the day, that disturbed the buying pattern, reducing the throughput to the abattoirs. And that also made us not being able to timely meet our export commitments to our export markets like Norway, like China, like the EU. In fact, further down the line, the logistics were also affected, in the sense that in the past, whereas we used to get our meat to Norway, which is our pristine market, where we fetch the highest price, and through South Africa and China, which took about 28 days. Now, because of the COVID-19, we have to reroute our consignments through Walvis Bay, going all around to China, and then back to Norway, which extends the period of delivery to 52 days.
All right.
That is a significant loss in terms of business. For winners, you may recall that the livestock sector has transited from a situation where 5-10 years ago we used to sell mainly slaughter-ready cattle. But because of the protracted droughts, you find that we have not been able to keep large head numbers, since we cannot grow the calves and winners on the field and let them grow for a long period to become slaughter-ready. So farmers were mostly relying on selling winners through buyers that are mainly from South Africa. But then South Africa is hit by COVID-19, and then because of that, most of people have been laid off in South Africa from their jobs. Some have had reduced salaries, which means the demand either at restaurants to consume meat or the products that emanate from the winners that we sell that come from the feedlots has gone down. So feedlots are not able to offload their livestock, and if they are not able to offload their livestock to the supermarkets and to the other retailers, they cannot come and buy here.
Thank you,
So
Mr.
we have
Msika.
seen a decline in number of sales in terms of winners and of exports to South Africa.
Thank you.
Be that as it may be, the business is continuing because agriculture is regarded as essential and critical service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Msika. I now move over to Ms. Tulu. The question is really around their emerging farmers who, of course, as Mr. Msika has alluded to, the drought had a big impact on the current stock they have. Some have loans with different banking institutions. The issue around really payment holidays, issue around relaxation of interest on loans, as well as the involvement of farmers in the measures that were taken during COVID-19. What has been the experience of the union, and how did it contribute in mitigating all these factors that are affecting farmers?
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. I just want to give a bit of a background in terms of the Namibia National Farmers Unions and its representation. We represent the largest share of the agricultural population. That's 90%, or in fact more than 90% of the people that are in agriculture. Those are the people whose interest we are representing, and they are the ones that are half of the population also. They make up half of the population, and they are mainly doing their business in the communal areas, that's on communal land. So it's quite a large population, and without stressing or repeating what the ED had said, these people have always been affected in terms of their production. Just to give you a little bit of an example, if we are talking about, and also just to say that in terms of COVID-19, the effect, we are looking at it as a fleeting moment. And that if it is managed well, as it seems as if it is being managed well. The effect of COVID-19 really are fleeting. There are a few of them and they will be short-lived. The biggest effect that we'll have to deal with are those ones that come from a long period, in fact, decades of drought, decades of sometimes neglect in terms of investment in agriculture, especially in the communal areas. So, looking at just the performance of that sector alone in terms of the statistics, we are talking about, for example, in 2000, we were producing on an area of 260,000 hectares. We were producing 60 tons in the communal areas of millet, mahangu as we know it. In 2011, we were expanding our areas of production, labor shortages. We didn't have labor workers retreated to their homes, farmer-assisted groups that were assisting one another in terms of wild animals, in terms of birds, they also retreated, they dismantled. So then it exposed the crop and also the livestock. Herders also retreated to their homes. So it exposed the livestock and also crop to predators. So we would be expecting lower yields than we had expected.
Thank you.
And also, in terms of the livestock, we also see that for our auctions in communal areas, prices have gone down by sometimes up to $9 per kg. So that already put pressure on the cash flow of our farmers that they are not able to pay anymore their loans. And so we have engaged with government, and we have asked them, and also with the Agricultural Bank, we have asked them to reschedule the payments. We have asked them, we have also asked that the credit guarantee scheme, it is now time to activate it. It is now time to activate it and give relief for at least a period of 6 months, to farmers, that they would not pay for that period so that they can have a fresh start. So we are asking for a fresh start for farmers. Write off some of the loans because we have a guaranteeing scheme, and give a fresh break to the farmers.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you for now.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Venter, of course, Ms. Kulu already alluded to it really, that the issue of the labor at the different farming areas has been reduced because of COVID-19. What has been the experience of the Agricultural Union, especially with surviving these times and some of the depression that Ms. Kulu already spoke about? How are farmers surviving now, and how are they able to cater for their employees and workers?
Yeah, thank you. I need to start and say that due to COVID-19, the immediate factors in the agricultural sector is being felt at Swakara, which cannot be, they cannot export pelts. At the dairy sector, where feedstuffs was stopped, spent grain couldn't be produced, so production went down, and especially in the trophy hunting and the on-farm tourism sector was severely hit by 100% cancellation of fund. Of clients. So that is the immediate impact. In the short term, in the medium term, there's very, very big uncertainty what's going to happen. In terms of our markets, the demand patterns are changing in South Africa, in the European Union. We as an agricultural sector are exporting 80% of the income which a farmer is receiving in the country. 80% of that product is being exported. So the export market is crucial for the agricultural survival. In terms of employment, as you directly ask, due to the fact that agriculture is an essential service and a critical essential service, which operations on farms are continuing. And even in the on-farm tourism and the trophy sector industry, farmers are doing all they can to contain any retrenchments, and are doing, because we need to understand there's huge diversification which took place with farmers taking on tourism to add to the income, taking on trophy hunting, and that sector have totally stopped. Yeah. So farmers are doing what they can to prevent any retrenchments, and we need to focus on this to ensure that these farmers are which is heavily affected, are not forced in the next 4 to 6 weeks to reduce working shifts, to reduce salaries in terms of that. But the primary agricultural haven't yet lost any employment opportunities according to our information.
Thank you very much. I'll move over to Mr. 061-400-397. That's 061-400-397 to get your queries and questions in to the panel, or simply give your thoughts on the impact of COVID-19 on our agricultural sector in Namibia. So, Mr. Nekongo, you're joining us from Skype. What we'd like to know from you is, you are a crop production farmer. Mr. Misika already alluded to a lot of things around how that has impacted your sector, but we'd like to hear from you as someone who's on the ground producing food for this country, and especially considering that as much as we're in a pandemic now, there would be a post-COVID-19 or a transition to a normality post the current situation we are in. So what has been your experience, and what is your outlook on a post-COVID-19 situation in the agricultural sector?
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I think I'm out on behalf of the farmers, and I think the needs of felt, I agree, and I also concur with the panelists have entered to. But I think the important thing as the small-scale farm is more market. You know that our product is more so open market, and since that it was shut down, you have seen that many of the farmers has to, throw away their produce, and well, perhaps now with the market being opening up, maybe that will be able to assist the farmers. But what I must also tell here is that we have more farmers, especially in horticultural production, in poultry production, that are sitting with their product that do not have the market. And I think we will want to urge government, especially to procure this produce, maybe through Fresh Hub or whatever arrangement that Mr. Misika maybe can shed more light on that. But I think what I'm seeing here, our farmers are sitting with the produce without the market. And I think that's one thing that we need to really look at, because products. Hence, my call is really for government to look into that seriously, so that then I'm sitting with many people that I'm seeing, like there's a farmer in Yoruba, for example. He have more eggs that he was selling at the open market. As we speak, those eggs are sitting. I have many farmers here also in the north that are sitting with the same situation. I have seen many farmers that were disposing their cabbages because they couldn't get the market because of the shutdown of the open market and so forth. So, and also perhaps government to also see to it that this produce we must see to it that this produce end up in ShopRite shelves or Pick and Pay or whatever the case may be. I think that is my take on the impact. But I would also then propose to say, perhaps after, yes, I'm hearing the panelists are saying the same thing, that well, we might not see the bumper harvest that we expect. But I think what it tells us is really to say, how do we then think the way forward in terms of our agricultural sector amidst this COVID-19? What will be the way forward after this? I think one would want to say, in a worst scenario, what will happen if perhaps South Africa could close their border today? Will the country able to feed its own people? Amid with our good policy that we have, do we have enough storage of food in our reserve, for example? These are things that we really need to ask ourselves as a country in terms of preparedness of any worst scenario. So that will be my take to say, after COVID-19, I think it's high time that we put our head together to see to it that we will be able to produce food for our people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nakongo, for that. We have a caller on the line. We have Mr. Shapumba.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning.
Please go ahead.
I'm doing good.
All right, you can go ahead.
Can I go on with my question?
Yes, please go ahead, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You may go ahead.
Okay. My question has to do with the agriculture. We're now we are now at this time of like the production now, like from the field and all those things. People are maybe they are busy like harvesting now. How really this now agricultural products can reach us here? Because due to the lockdown, most of people we need this the vegetables, but they are not really available here. What is the mechanism in place when it comes from the Ministry of Agriculture so that the crops and the vegetables can reach the society?
Mr. Shapumba, could you just ask your question again, but just
Hello?
in short?
Yeah.
Just repeat the question. Mr. Shapumba, we are saying just repeat the question again. Mr. Shapumba? Okay, we have lost that caller. But I now give the opportunity to the media practitioners here at the center who have any questions to please take the podium so that we can just take a question from the floor as we get another caller. Yes, ma'am. Not yet. Try now.
Good morning. My name is Shameen Gashihewe from the Namibian newspaper. I wanted to find out from Mr. Misika in terms of food security. Earlier in the year, one of the reports the ministry released said that about 280,000, I think close to 300,000 people basically face weakening food security. So in terms of COVID and in terms of your assessment, how many people do you think now stand to face weakening food security? And what is the future of food security in Namibia following after COVID? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have another question, ma'am. The floor is yours.
Good morning. My name is Tuwili Kakawika. I'm from the Ministry of Information. I'm asking a question on behalf of a farmer that couldn't call in. She's a farmer in the Osiri area, and she's asking why the sale and transportation of charcoal and wood was regarded non-essential, because she feels that she owes Agribank and now she's sitting with products that she can't move. She's particularly worried because she feels that wood and charcoal are service or are products that people use on a daily basis. Thank you.
We have one more. I'll take one more for this round. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Andrew with the Windhoek Observer. I wanted to find out what has been the impact in figures on the agricultural sector's contribution to the GDP because of COVID-19, and also what lessons are we learning from this in terms of our dependency on imports? What measures are we putting in place for self-sustenance going into the future?
Thank you very much. We have Mr. Pretorius on the line to ask the last question for this round. Mr. Pretorius? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir, you may go ahead.
Good morning. Yes,
Sorry. You may go ahead and ask your question.
I want to ask when if this fresh market in town to be open so that people can buy vegetables.
If you could just repeat that, I apologize, the sound is not so well. Could you just repeat that question?
When is the fresh market in town going to be open
Okay.
for people to buy fresh vegetables?
Okay. That is clear. Thank you very much.
And the second one?
Uh-huh.
When is the what?
I'm hearing fresh market.
Profit at the moment for 6 months or
Mr. Pretorius, your line is cutting a little bit.
yes.
Mr. Pretorius? Yeah, unfortunately we didn't get the second question, but we did get the first one. When are the fresh markets in town going to open for people to buy fresh products? Those were the questions. Perhaps you can start with Mr. Misika, as some of the questions were directed to your ministry directly.
Thank you once again, Honorable Deputy Minister. Let me start with the issue of the status of food insecurity in the country. We all know that during the drought period, when we had the drought relief program, close to about 744,000 people were assessed and identified as being food insecure. And they were receiving food aid or drought relief through food aid, through OPM, and also through the food bank. As we move forward, with the onset of COVID-19, the picture does not really change for the better. Why? Because if you had those people, 744,000, being food insecure, and the COVID-19 comes in before they are able, those who planted are able to harvest and have their own produce to satisfy their household needs, then it means on top of the already food insecure people that you have, or that you had, you are now adding quite a number of people that were accessing food because they had an income. And since these people's income is either reduced, if you look at the informal sector, look at the number of people that dependent on selling kapana, on selling liquor, on selling fresh produce that were closed for a time. Those that were the owners of such businesses and their workers means all of them have no income. So that
Mr.
adds to the picture or to the number of people that are food insecure.
So when are the fresh open markets opening?
Yes, let me come to that. As we speak, the fresh produce business hubs under AMTA are open.
Okay.
They have not been closed. Whether we are talking of the one from here in Windhoek, the one in Ongwendiva, and the one in Rundu, they are all open. What brought a disruption in the supply of fresh produce directly from the farmers to the market was the closure initially of the informal and formal open markets. However, as you might have seen, that in the revised regulations, there has been efforts by government to open that part of the sector so that the people that found themselves without income or without jobs and the farmers who had no access to a market can have access to that market.
All right.
However, this will have to be done following the guidelines that have been prescribed by the Ministry of Health and Social Services and also by the WHO in terms of distancing, in terms of sanitization and washing of hands, so as to prevent further spread of the COVID-19 disease. Added to this, maybe the question on why wood and charcoal are not regarded as essential or critical services. Yes, it's true. If you look at Gazette number 7159 of 28 March 2020, charcoal was not included there, and so was wood. There was energy and fuel. But when you talk of fuel, wood and charcoal are also fuels.
Okay.
So in the revised Gazette, number 7180, charcoal and wood is listed as an essential service.
All right.
The other question was on impact of COVID on GDP. I'm quite sure our colleagues from the media are well aware that it takes time before you collect all the data that's required to determine whether there has been an overall negative impact. But number two, to what extent is that impact? What we all know is that globally, continentally, and in Namibia, there is definitely a negative impact of COVID on all sectors, not only on agriculture, and on the economy, meaning on GDP. However, the extent of that impact in Namibia can only be assessed at a later stage when all the figures are on the table.
Thank you very much, Mr. Misika. Maybe I can move over to Mr. Nekongo before I come back to our panelists. There was also a question around lessons learned for the agricultural sector. Could you perhaps share with us what are some of the lessons you are learning, especially around crop production and our dependency for imports, was the question for you as crop production farmers?
As I said, I think Mr. Misika did not pay attention to my interventions, and I would want to put it across to say, can government assist farmers? The farmers don't need a package or whatever. We need a loan to be at least to be assisted at least. But I want to talk about farmers who are sitting with their produce, and he say the fresh produce are open. My question is, as the fresh produce are open, what is happening there? The market is not there. The producers are sitting with their product without a market. And I think AMTA was supposed to be able to deal with that. But as we speak now, where will the farmer, or can the producer go and throw out their vegetable as we are seeing? I think that is where I want us to focus on, because if we are to assist our farmers and not to give them pressure, can we see to it that perhaps all this donation that I'm seeing, we have farmers that are sitting with their butternuts, cabbages, tomatoes, eggs, and chicken sometimes. How will the government assist these farmers to get this produce to the market? That's what I want really to deal with.
Thank you very much. Mr. Venter, any contributions to the questions asked?
I can answer.
Sorry? Mr. Venter, yes.
Yeah, maybe two things. In terms of the GDP, I can just, of course, GDP in agriculture is directly impacted by what is being produced. The number of heads being produced, the liters of milk, the tons of grain.
Yeah.
That is driving GDP in agriculture. So if we're looking in during this year, maize harvest, crop harvest will be on average or above average due to good rains. Livestock production, as Mr. Masika will said, will be severely hampered due to the drought of the past since 2013 and the reduction of 50%, an estimated 50% of our national herd. We need to go into a herd rebuilding phase. Liters of milk will be impacted negatively, as I've mentioned. But I think we need to focus and say that to turn this around, primary agriculture is a very impacting very positive on the rural economy. We want to grow the rural economy. Primary agriculture is providing employment opportunities in the rural areas. Income being received by selling of products are invested back in the rural economy. And this is where we need to grow. We need to turn this around and focus on primary agriculture, increase production. That will have an impact on GDP in agriculture. That will curb migration from rural areas to urban areas, and that will create employment in the urban areas. But for this to happen, we need to invest in primary agriculture. We need to invest in the rural areas. We need to provide policies on a national basis which will encourage investment by investors in the rural economy. That will drive employment opportunities in the rural areas. That will drive the growth of the rural economy and curb migration to urban areas.
Thank you, Mr. Venter. Ms. Kulu, anything to add?
Yes, I think just to add already to what have been said, I think I was privileged enough to understand what the Europeans did with their agriculture after the World War II. They were devastated and they wanted to make sure that they restored the economy. And one of the things that they did is to heavily subsidize agriculture. They subsidized agriculture to the extent that they began to export among one another. So what we are suggesting in terms of going forward with agriculture, number one, is that first of all, this country at a political level, we need to make a decision about the place of agriculture in the economy. And for us as farmers, we are saying that agriculture is number one priority in the economy. And if we all agree, then it means that we have to commit resources and develop resources to make sure that we achieve what agriculture needs to achieve. And that also means that we have to subsidize agriculture. Right now, the Europeans have stopped subsidizing agriculture production in terms of giving subsidy for production and also guaranteeing prices, but they are still giving subsidies to farmers to reduce production because they have produced so much. Now, they are doing subsidization. Why can't we do it? When they were doing subsidization, they had good rains. They didn't have a problem with soils. Us, we are having already the challenges of rainfall. The climate is not very good for agriculture. And then we want to subject our farmers to another burden, which is loans, agricultural credit. How, in this harsh environment, can farmers produce efficiently, and also when they don't have the capacity to invest, how can they produce efficiently? So we are saying, let the farmers get subsidized to produce. And as I said earlier, let's relieve their loan burdens.
All right. For now, that is all. Ms. Kulu will give you a chance at the end. We have two more questions. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Stephen from Commerce and Industry Review magazine. My question goes to the ED, Ministry of Agriculture. The COVID has exposed our preparedness in terms of disasters and things like that. It's only 3 weeks of lockdown and we are crying about food shortage. Now, what I've noticed in other countries is that they have silos, food storage facilities for every region where the government buys directly from farmers to store for later use where there's a problem. Now, my question is, do we have silos, any plan like that in Namibia where we store food so that we don't have to buy food all the time when time comes? The second question is on Kalimbeza. A few years back, we had a vibrant program of producing local rice. But at the moment, we hear the production of the Kalimbeza has drastically gone down. Why is that the case?
That is clear. Thank you.
Okay.
Following question.
Good morning, Thierry freelance journalist. Just 3 quick ones. One to the ED. I just wanted to know, would you be in a position to know maybe how many jobs have been affected so far since this started? The second one is just a question that I got from one of the readers. I would like to know whether, when you talk of subsidies and also government guarantees to support farmers, would this also include communal farmers? I'm speaking about those farmers in the Kunene near the Angolan border.
That is clear.
I think in the past few years they've been assisted by the FAO government and also the Chinese to do backyard gardening. Okay. How do they benefit from this? Then last but not least, I wanted to know on the farmers in the northern part of the country where the red line is, how would they also benefit in terms of access to the market?
Thank you. Just to add to that, ED, there's also a position around what farmers are doing to actually pay their workers, perhaps the ministry's position on that, and that if farmers who are in urban areas and want to go to their farms to vaccinate their animals, if they are permitted to do so through travel permits and so on. Maybe if you could just also respond to those ones.
Okay. Thank you once again, Honorable Deputy Minister. Let me start by maybe referring to the question of Honorable Nekongo, that relates to the issue of small-scale horticultural farmers and inadequate market access for their produce. If one looks at the regulations, where the revised ones, where we are saying the informal and formal open market should be opened to avail a market for the produce, it was also noted that even if you open, there could be problems of how farmers get their produce to the market. As such, in the directive that relates to the opening of informal markets, AMTA was designated as an institution that would work with other private sector institutions to buy directly from the farmers and then on-sell to the informal markets so as to reduce or to absorb that transportation and the logistical costs that individual vendors might face and become an impediment should they be required to go and get the produce from the farmers directly, or when the farmers have to then only sell directly to the vendors. That was number one. And AMTA assured us, meaning the ministry, that it had a budget of up to 3 million for such a program. They are prepared to buy. If there are farmers out there that have their horticultural produce that need to be sold, let them get in touch with AMTA.
All right.
The second part of that question is to say government took note of the issue of inadequate market access for agricultural produce in the country. And already last year, Cabinet took a decision which was then actualized by a directive from the former Minister of Finance, Honorable Kalish Ratvine, directing all owners to buy, all institutional government institutions to buy local in terms of agricultural produce. So if that is not being done, it is because of us the administrators, the functionaries, the technocrats that are supposed to put that into implementation. Otherwise, the policy directive is there, and we just must implement it.
All right.
Coming to the...
There was the Kalimbeza question.
Pardon?
The question about the Kalimbeza project.
Yes, but there was the issue of preparedness by government. You may know that before independence, colleagues, we only had 3 or 4 private silos in the country. But after independence, we built up silos in Katima Mulilo, in Rundu, in Sandi, in Omsia, and up in Omahenene. Those silos have a capacity of 22,900 tons, or metric tons, that can be kept there of grains. And up to the onset of the drought in 2018-2019, the silos were almost 50% full, meaning they had a capacity of about 11,000 tons of grains. But because of the programs that I have referred to earlier of government trying to aid the food insecure with food, most of those silos have been depleted. So as we speak now, there is nothing in the silos because first you had what was there, but then we had no produce during the previous cropping season of 2019-2020. So there was nothing to recharge back in the silos. That's why they are empty.
All right.
But we are prepared, the capacity for having grains bought up from farmers and stored for national use for food security purposes is there.
Okay.
The issue of Kalimbeza rice project, yes, it has been operational. Unfortunately, because of funding constraints by the operating entity, which is AgriBizDev, it was not able to produce rice during 2018, 2019, and last year. And as such, Kalimbeza rice project did not have rice that could be sold to the markets. But we have already taken measures. We ring-fenced the budget for Kalimbeza, and by last year already, October, we transferred 7 million to Kalimbeza. And unfortunately, that was too late for them to be able to procure the production input that are requisite for production. They are doing so now, and we are hopeful that come the next cropping season, which for the rice production, much earlier in August, they should be able to put about 150 hectares under production.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Musika. We are now concluding our discussion, so I'll start with you, Ms. Kulu. Just your concluding remarks with regard to the impact of COVID-19 on our agricultural sector.
Thank you. The impact, as I said earlier, is minimal, and we were lucky that we had good rains. But going forward, what I would like to see is that immediately, as a measure to also relieve the producers, is that drought relief claims must be paid immediately to relieve the cash flow of the farmers. We need to think about the position of agriculture in the sector and make it priority number 1. We need to invest in further production to make sure that our farmers are able to raise ox, ready cattle to slaughter. We need to invest in road infrastructure. And I want to emphasize that we have to make this sector competitive. The whole value chain of the agriculture sector, we need to have it competitive. We are opening up markets to other countries. They are coming in without restrictions. And if we don't invest in the agriculture sector, we are going to see that there are no products, Namibian products, on the shelves in the shops.
Thank you.
So, and we have to develop our markets as well. And we have to develop markets that are less restrictive so that we can reduce the cost to the farmers of accessing those markets.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I now move over to Mr. Nekongo to give his concluding remarks.
The only sector in this country, colleagues, that can create employment for our people. I think COVID-19 should teach us a lesson to prepare ourselves so that in future I would want to see those silos full so that we are prepared that our people cannot die in case if our borders are closed. So hence I would want to agree with my colleagues to say, let's us put agriculture as the #1 sector. Let's invest in agriculture. Let government come up with programs to assist the primary agricultural sector. We would want to see all water harvesting mechanisms so that we can harvest water.
All right. Okay, we lost Mr. Nekongo. Thank you very much for that. I now move over to Mr. Venter.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's massive uncertainty in the medium term in terms of our markets, our export markets, and even our local markets. We are already experiencing as farmers severe cash flow challenges in this time due to the drought and due to this as well. We need payment holidays as farmers with banks. We're very grateful of the stimulus package, which was already announced that there's a government guaranteed loan by Agribank being provided. We need to speed that up to open that and make it available to farmers to ensure that these cash flow challenges can be managed.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Masika, you have an opportunity to give some final remarks to the topic, but also just to touch a little bit on the permits. Are there permits for farmers who are in urban areas and can't access their farms and so on, to be able to vaccinate their animals, take their workers' food, pay their workers, and so on, as you conclude?
Thank you once again, Honorable Deputy Minister. Let me assure the nation at large and all the farmers and stakeholders in the sector that yes, agriculture is facing tough times because of the protracted droughts, but also it will face some problems because of COVID. However, all is not lost. I believe in one thing: there can be no sunrise without sunset. We are in darkness today, but we should look forward to a bright future in the agricultural sector. As a way forward, #1, for the current period when we are facing the COVID-19 lockdown, we have yesterday agreed with Home Affairs, with the NAMPOL and ourselves that as from tomorrow when these forms are distributed countrywide, farmers, both full-time and part-time, will have places where they can go, meaning to our agricultural extension offices, to our state veterinarian offices, to the offices of rural water supply, that's the heads of in the regions, and the heads of land reform in the regions. Plus also they can visit the deputy directors for clusters of rural water supply and also of agriculture extension services who are clustered in Northwest Subdivision, North Central Division, Northeastern Division, and Southern Division. Any of these offices have been designated as delegated officials who can then, where the farmers can go to, they fill in an application form to show that they are moving to their farm or from their farm to get provision for their workers, or to take their workers to hospital, or to get salaries for their workers.
All right.
And also to have their animals. If there is something broken on the farm, they can bring that will be stated on the application form, which I can show here.
That is available from tomorrow.
The application form is here that they will have to fill. Once they have filled this, if that movement is within the zone, the delegated official is having authority to authorize you to travel to your farm within the zone.
Thank you,
But
Mr. Masika.
if it's outside of the zone, you have to go to the police with that form, and then you'll get a movement permit between or across the zones.
All right.
For the way forward, let me say that this situation happens at an opportune time when the Ministry of Land Reform and the Ministry of Agriculture and Water and Forestry were merged minus forestry. This gives us an opportunity within these sectors to integrate and ensure that we address issues of agriculture and land comprehensively, to make land productive and to ensure that we are able to produce and not rely on other countries for our food security.
Thank you very much, Mr. Masika. Thank you for that. I am very thankful to the panelists that joined us today, Mr. Masika, Ms. Kulu, Mr. Venter, and Mr. Nekongo, for joining us and talking about really the impact of the agricultural sector in the times such as COVID-19. Thank you, viewers and listeners, for tuning in. Please continue to join us as we discuss all things related to COVID-19. Join us at 4 o'clock this afternoon as we look at the preparedness of the health sector in fighting COVID-19. That is all from us here, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you.